Nick Caserio takes care of home first, getting deals done with Dalton Schultz and Ka'imi Fairbairn. 3 more years. And so now we look at that and also the updated market for John Greenard and if he returns back home.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers to this Thursday episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, excluding yesterday, Wednesday show, we didn't post. I'm your Texans football analyst, John, some sports guy Hickman on the other side of the screen, Texas Credential Media member, Sports Illustrated's own Cody Davids. If this is your first time listening or watching the Locked On Texans podcast, first and foremost, thank you for stopping by. Please subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. And if you are a returning listener, lending your ear for another episode as Cody and I talk shop, thank you for returning because I think today is a very important podcast and you didn't want to miss it. All right, we opened up looking at whether or not Nick Caserio got it right with Dalton Schultz and Ka'imi Fairbairn, giving them 3 more years. And so we'll talk about that, the updated market for John Greenard, and how to save a bit more money by releasing players. And on the flip side, we look at players that have been recently released that make sense for the Houston Texans. And I want you guys to keep in mind, Nick Caserio is the king of prove-it deals. And so regardless of how their situation ended with their former team, things can be a little bit different here in Houston. Today's episode is brought to you by none other than Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKED ON for $20 off your first purchase. Cody, Dalton Schultz, Ka'imi Fairbairn, they return back to the Houston Texans. Texans re-signed Dalton Schultz to a 3-year contract. He gets a 3-year, $36 million new contract with $23.5 million in fully guaranteed as signing. And Houston also, again, re-signed Fairbairn to a 3-year deal worth $15.9 million. He was slated to become an unrestricted free agent next week, so Houston makes sure that they kept him in-house. And guys, remember, when you look at that number, nearly $16 million, the league had an issue last year with missed field goals. He connected on 29 of 31 of his field goals in 2022 and 27 of 28 field goals in 2023. His only miss came by a field goal longer than 50 yards. And remember how desperate Houston was when Fairbairn was out. Right, we had running back kicking a PAT. Right, it was rough out there for Houston. The Texans make Schultz the 12th highest paid tight end in the NFL. And Nick has historically taken care of his players in Houston first, if that makes sense. Right, that's what he's been doing. That's been his MO since he's arrived in Houston. And I think both of these deals make sense, right, Cody?
Yeah, I love both of these deals, and it was very important for Nick Caserio and the Houston Texans to not only take care of both of these players, but not letting them test the free agency market. And we're going to talk about in the second segment how testing the free agency market could actually be detrimental for the Houston Texans when it comes to Jonathan Greenard. But when you take a look at Dalton Schultz, starting with him, look, I'm not about to sit here and bang on the table and say that Dalton Schultz is a top 3, top 5 tight end in this entire league. I think when everybody's healthy, there are a couple of tight ends that are a little bit better than Dalton Schultz. However, John, when you go back and you take a look at the 2023 campaign season alone, Dalton Schultz production made him a top 5, let's say, impactful tight end. We know what he meant to this this offense. We know what he meant to CJ Stroud. We know, I understand there was moments where he had a couple drop passes, a couple crucial drop passes, but at the same time, if he went out there and made a mistake, he made sure to capitalize on that on the next play. So Dalton Schultz, very happy for him, John. I love the fact that they was able to retain him. However, I was a big surprised that they committed 3 years to him because you know me, I've always been supportive of bringing Dalton Schultz back. However, I always thought it would have been in the Texans' best interest to franchise tag him, give him that one more year. And like I said, in the 2024 draft, you go out, draft his replacement. Then in 2025, you're able to move on. However, 3-year deal with, I believe, $24 to $30 million guaranteed. So you're looking at a potential 2-year contract with Dalton Schultz. This is going to be a situation where, look, if you take a look at this tight end core, it's almost like the safety unit in a way. If the season was to start next week, your tight end unit is set. Dalton Schultz, tight end number 1, Brevin Jordan, tight end number 2. And depending on what goes on with Tegan Quatoriano, yes, we did see some promise in him during his rookie season in 2022. However, we now have to see how much has been taken away from him in his development due to the fact that he missed the whole entire season. But look, they got Dalton Schultz taken care of. It's a very good deal. However, John, I do not want to see Dalton Schultz have this much responsibility in 2024 like he did in 2023. Because I only said that because if that's the case, if he is still, let's say, top 3 in receiving yards, that would mean that the Houston Texans did not do their job in improving that wide receiving unit. By the way, Ka'imi Fairbairn, shout out to him. This past season, in the 8-9 games that he missed, that's when I realized how important it is to make sure that you have a premier kicker on your team. No disrespect to Matt Amendola, but come on now, man. Come on.
Yeah, Houston know the woes of not having a good kicker. I do want to say that I don't think that if Dalton Schultz is top 3, I don't think that they did not do their job. When Dalton Schultz had a second year under Kellen Moore, he was a very productive player. And that's when Kellen was a young OC in Dallas, right? And I think that year he had 800 yards. And he was also third behind CeeDee Lamb, and I want to say Amari Cooper was still there in Dallas. And that was a high-powered offense that year. And you look at the possibility of a healthy full-season Tank and a full-season Nico, Dalton Schultz can come right in and fit into that with a second year under an OC. So I don't want to say that because
well, let me clarify my statement. I meant that because there was moments where either it was due to injury or lack of production from Robert Woods or Noah Brown. You had to rely on Dalton Schultz, especially the back half of the 2023 season when after Tank Dell had went down, you were looking at Dalton Schultz like, come on now, we definitely need you to step up today. That's what I meant by I do not want to see him carry the same responsibility or have the Texans rely on him as much. And that's what I meant. If that's the case, then you're looking at a situation where it's like, okay, what did you do not do in the draft and who you let pass slip through your fingers in free agency?
I do want to say that regardless of how I felt in the past, right, because I've been adamant on I think Houston should, what they got out of Brevin Jordan in terms of being an improved blocker last year, I thought Houston, it would have made sense for them to look for a tight end. And there's some damn good tight ends coming out in this year's draft to replace Dalton Schultz. So I still feel that way. But I will say this. They retained him at a steal, right? They did not reset the market. It was a very affordable deal. He's going to be the 12th highest paid tight end. So it's not like they did him a favor. In fact, I think Houston did themselves a favor, right? It also helps remove the need of a use of a premium draft pick because if you replace Dalton Schultz, can you afford to wait until round 5, round 6, right? You look at those first 4 rounds, Houston only has 1 pick in each of those rounds. I think those are 4 of the premium rounds in this year's draft. Now you bring a guy back who, again, is going to a second year in the same offense, and he's been productive the last time that happened, 800 yards in the season for the Dallas Cowboys. Now you remove the need to use a premium pick in the draft to replace him, right? And so I think that's smart. And again, I think financially it was a smart deal, honestly. I'm not mad at the deal. Again, I've come on this show several times, and I said I think it'll be smart. I think that the Houston Texans will be smart with how they use their paper. They're using it right? However, my opinion still remains the same. I believe that there was value in drafting a tight end. But overall, I look at how Houston is really putting together this team, right? They're taking care of home first. They understand the value of players that have been productive in their house first, right? And I also wanted to address the Fairbairn signing. For Fairbairn, now the fifth highest paid kicker, it made sense to retain him, right? Again, Amendola, Dare made field goals or PATs last year, and the league had an issue with missing PATs and field goals last year. I mean, it was a league-wide issue for the past couple seasons. You're seeing teams try out kickers, it seems like every other week at one point. And so for Houston, as much as we know that they value special teams, getting that deal done with Fairbairn is important. And on top of that, these are 3-year deals. Once these deals are up, now you're looking at extensions for CJ, Tank, right? Will Anderson. So these deals won't clash with the deals of their stellar rookies that they have on this roster right now that'll be going into their sophomore year this upcoming season. Now, we talk about Schultz, we talk about Fairbairn. They're getting their deals done. The question now is, do you feel like there's no chance Houston resigns Jonathan Greenard? And now outside free agents may look at Schultz in his deal and say to themselves, hey, man, I'm a higher ranking player in my position than he is. So my contract should reflect that. So we'll talk about Jonathan Greenard really quick, but Cody, do you think that there's going to be a conflict with outside free agents that may come in and say, listen, you just signed him to the 12th highest tight end deal in the league. So at the very least, he's a 12th tight end. I'm a premium free agent. I'm coming in, I'm saying to myself, I'm a top 7 player at this position. I'm a top 8 player at this position. For some of the guys, I'm a top 3 or 5 player in my position. So my contract definitely needs to reflect that. Is there going to be a conflict of interest there?
I'm going to say no.
Can it be at least?
I'm going to say no for the Texans, at least for this season, only because they are the hottest and newest thing. And there's so many players who wants to come here. On the defensive side of the ball, there are players who want to team up with Will Anderson. There's players who want to play under Coach D'Amico Ryans. And on the offensive side of the ball, there's players who want to play alongside Tank and Nico. And of course, the biggest thing, there's players who just want to be teammates and get into the aura of CJ Stroud. So I'm going to say no on that part. That's why I still believe that the Houston Texans are still in a prime position to sign some very good free agents, and it started next week.
Yeah. Dalton Schultz did compare the Dallas Cowboys to a zoo-like environment and atmosphere. He was on the Pat McAfee show. Said he'd be working out, and you'll see guys just on tours. So that culture compared to the culture he's now in Houston, which is all about building, which is all about winning, which is all about, what did D'Amico say? Good husbands, good guys off the field, good friends. I'm sure Dalton was like, I know what the other side looks like. I want to stay where I'm at. The grass ain't always greener, but his pockets just got greener. We'll talk about John Greenard and his updated market for him to return next. You shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. The best part about it, killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. You got zone deals where you pick the section and Game Time picks the seats for big-time savings. And again, I mentioned the guarantee, the Game Time guarantee. That means you'll always get the best price. And if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Download the Game Time app today, right now. Stop what you're doing. Create an account and use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Also, passion, drive, patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Motor Guarantee Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because eBay Motors, you burn rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, to this Thursday installment of Locked On Texans. So when we was talking about the re-signing of Dalton Schultz and Ka'imi Fairbairn, John, I felt one of the best things that the Houston Texans did, as I mentioned in the first segment, was the fact that they did not let neither one of those guys test the free agency market. Unfortunately, that is the trajectory where they are headed with Jonathan Greenard, and I do believe that is where it's going to get very, very difficult for the Houston Texans to sign him. But not only that, it's going to be even more tempting for Greenard to go outside of NRG Stadium to get a payday that he rightfully deserved. Because look, I know a lot of people are looking at the Schultz and Fairbairn signing and asking themselves, how does that affect Jonathan Greenard? Look, that's about what, 17.5 to 18 million between both of those guys. As of right now, at the time of this recording, the Houston Texans are entering free agency with about 60 to 70 million dollars in cap space. So that doesn't impact them financially as well. They still want to get a deal done with JG. They can. However, John, I think the events that took place on Tuesday, the day of the franchise tag, was very detrimental to the Houston Texans and Jonathan Greenard marriage, because it did two things. One, it took Josh Allen and Brian Burns off the market. And two, most importantly, that left Jonathan Greenard one of 4 or 5 defensive pass rushers who recorded 10 or more sacks, who are hitting the open market. And out of those players, you're looking at Jones, Autry, Clowney. He is the youngest out of that bunch that I just named. All of those guys are 30, 31, 32. Jonathan Greenard is only 26 years old, which means not only his on-field production is going to mean a lot for several teams outside of Houston, but his age as well. Plus, you also got to consider that at the start of free agency, at the start of the offseason, Jonathan Greenard's market value was 13 million. You guys heard me say that a lot over the last couple of weeks. Now, with him testing the market, especially considering that Josh Allen, who was only 26 with 17.5 sacks, by far the best pass rusher in the league. Then you have Brian Burns. I understand 2023 was a down year, but the season before that, we had like 12 or 13 sacks. He's only 25 years old. Due to the production in age, this is going to be a window where Jonathan Greenard is definitely going to cash in and try to get one of his first major paydays. Plus, by the way, Greenard, I know, has one of the best well-known agents in the business today. And I'm getting to the point, John, where I'm like, look, in order for JG to come back, the Texans are going to have to give him a massive payday.
I agree with you on a lot of points. I think that now that Josh Allen has signed, that franchise tag, he's been franchised, and Brian Burns has been franchised, which I still believe Carolina, there's a window there for Carolina to find a trade partner, simply because I don't think Brian Burns wants to be there at all. And I think that situation in Carolina could get ugly. And so I think Carolina may field offers, honestly, but I think for Jags, I don't think they let Josh Allen go. I really don't. But now that those two guys, they got a franchise, it does seem difficult for Houston to bring them back, honestly. And if I'm John Greenard, I'm gonna take my reporter hat off, right? Take this off. If I'm John Greenard, I'm going to go get my paper. This is the paper show. We're talking about getting your money, right? I've been watching.
And he got a baby girl.
And he has, so I understand, right? I've been watching a lot of Boondocks, and Raleigh is just, I don't know, inspiring me right now to get my paper and not be a hater. So that's what I'm not going to do right now for John Greenard. If there's a team out there willing to give him that, $21-22 million, you take it. And as much as, you as a player may want to return back, and Houston as a franchise may want you back, no doubt about it. I think that they are working on internally, logistically, how can we get him back?
Mm-hmm.
The issue is his agent is like, hey man, look what he did last year. Will Anderson won Defensive Rookie of the Year and got a lot of hype in the national media. But look at the multiple sack games my player had for you guys. Look at the games where you needed pressure and who was there to create that pressure. Right? Look at the tackles for loss. Look at the career year he had. And if you want to keep D'Amico Ryans, which you will, he signed a 5-year deal, 6-year deal, however long it was. Look at what he did in year 1 under D'Amico, right? And he was an impactful player. So he should get paid like one. If they can't come to a number that makes sense financially, and I think the trend that we may see for Houston is 3-year deals, 2 and 3-year deals, because they don't want to. I don't think they want to lock themselves up in some of these contracts. Maybe outside of Nico, they need to get that extension done as soon as possible. By the way, but Nico wouldn't make sense to do a 4-year deal, right? Outside of Nico, and whenever Derek Stingley is up, there's not a lot of 4-year deal guys on his roster. Simply because by the time it gets around to pay that quarterback, it's going to cost a lot of money. So we're going to see the 3-year deals, right? We're going to see that. And I think in free agency, we're going to see a window that they want to maximize. And they can say they don't believe in windows as much as they want. They know there's a window in the NFL that you have to maximize. Now, after that window, you still can win ball games. You still can win a chip, no doubt about it. But in terms of the window to maximize, it's between now and 3 years from now. And so Schultz 3-year deals, Fairbairn 3-year deals. I think that Greenard may be looking for a 4-year deal. Something that I know that you could that last year, that contract, teams can get off of that. Right. So I think that may be what's to hold up. And of course the annual salary. And if for me, if it's more than 17.5, then as a franchise, I mean, we got guys out there that want to come play for us. And some of these guys, they can come in and be so impactful at their position that all we may have to do is go find another talented player. And as much as people may not want to hear this name, I mean, I'm not that big of a fan of him, but let's say you go out there and you can sign Christian Wilkins. Now you look at Will Anderson, Malik Collins, Wilkins. Do you flirt with the idea of Chase Young? Do you flirt with the idea of another young buck out of the draft? Do you flirt with some of these ideas because you got guys that are coming in, right? Maybe a Chris Jones. I'm just throwing their name out there because that is still a possibility. Do you bring a guy like him in, and now you look at Will Anderson, Malik Collins, Chris Jones. So now I can a young buck, we can fit you in and get it done, right? A Barnett, there's rumors of a son Riddick, maybe a 4th round to get that trade done. But what I'm getting at is if Houston brings in some of these guys that are linked to being in Houston, does the market for John Greenard returning to Houston dwindle? And I think for some of these guys that are very impactful at their position, and again, for Greenard, you're a top whatever player over the course of the last 2 seasons, 3 seasons. Some of these guys, top 5 at their position, top 6, top 7 at their position. Do they change everything? And I think absolutely they do. You're going to pay that $22, $23 million for Chris Jones. You're going to sacrifice that money because you know that he's going to get it going and everybody around him is going to eat greedy. And we know that Will Anderson can eat greedy. We know that Malik Collins can eat greedy. We saw what he can do when Sheldon Rankins got balling. So now it looks like money-wise, impact-wise, value-wise, which is a word that if you know your general manager, follow what he's been doing since he's got here. The blueprint of what Nick Caserio wants to do. 1-year deals, 2-year deals, maybe a 3-year deal. We're just now starting to see 3-year deals. Follow his blueprint. He'll show you. The value means a lot to him. And I think for Greenard, I may be on a soapbox here. His value to this team may dwindle the more that money count starts to increase. That annual salary starts to increase. And I think that's what we'll see. Okay, you know what? Thank you for your services. We really appreciate it. But we got to do what's best for the franchise. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from another retirement account with a 3% match. That's right. No cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Go gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal information. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% matches requires Robinhood Gold for a 1-year subscription from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC is a registered broker-dealer. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. So, Cody, the combined money between Dalton Schultz and Ka'imi Fairbairn is what now? Nearly 17 million?
Yeah, about 17.5, 18 million, somewhere around that ballpark.
So, out of the nearly $70 million Houston has spent, 18 million for this upcoming salary year, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to look at how they can recoup some of that money back by some of the players that are on this roster that, to say the least, has been less impactful of players and Houston can move along from. Cody, who are some of your cut candidates?
Right off the top of my head, man, I'm looking at Jimmy Ward, one of the most disappointing players of the past season. And I understand majority of the disappointment that he had came to injuries. However, there's been several times where Jimmy Ward could not help this team. And we saw how bad not having Jimmy Ward back there, your defensive backfield, hurt that safety unit. I mean, John, a couple of days ago, I forgot what topic we was talking about, but we was debating about something, and you was like, well, the defense, this is a defense that was one of the worst passing defense in the league. Well, majority of that was due to the issues that they had in that safety unit. That's the reason why they finished the season ranked 26 in pass defense, and majority of that does and did fall on the shoulders of Jimmy Ward. And another guy that I'm looking at on the offensive side of the ball is your boy, Robert Woods, a guy that, how much they'll be able to save? About 5 to 7 million if they cut ties with him.
5 million.
And I get it. I understand it. I think at the start of the last season, I might have put too much responsibility on Robert Woods, only because at the time I truly did not know what the Houston Texans had in Tank. Tank comes in, take the helm as wide receiver number 2. Noah Brown had his moments. However, John, I just felt that there was moments where this offense could have taken a little bit more of a step forward if Robert Woods would have given this team something on the field. Off the field, locker room, veteran leadership, and all that of that was good. But when the guys had to play inside them lines, man, he was a no-show outside of week 1 and maybe one other game, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, definitely got to move on from Robert Woods. Jimmy Ward as well. I want to throw MJ Stewart in that mix. If Houston moves on from MJ Stewart and releases him, they save 2.75. But I would say they have to retain some of these guys at their safety position, right? They even tweeted the other day, like, will Houston get anything out of now sophomore safety out of Pitt, Brandon Hill, this year?
I think so.
Was featured in one game, didn't register any stat though. So I'm interested in him, but they got to move on from at least, Jimmy or MJ Stewart. I think financially it makes sense to move on from Jimmy, but culture-wise, I can see D'Amico saying, no, he's my guy. And there's some things that I believe he can help teach whoever we bring in our safety room to get that player acclimated to the coaching system here and what we like to do. But I would definitely move on from Jimmy Ward. On the flip side, this is a conversation that I think we need to extend because it's happening rapidly, right? Players are getting released and cut. And you look at the offseason DBs that have been released so far: Jamal Adams, Kevin Byard, Quandre Diggs, Xavier Howard, who we've talked about, Eddie Jackson, the safety from Chicago, J.C. Jackson, Rayshawn Jenkins, Avonte Maddox, Jordan Poyer, Tre'Davious White, Darius Williams out of the Jags, program. There are some players that have been released. Jerome Baker at linebacker. We're now going to expect the Bengals to release veteran running back Joe Mixon. Tyler Boyd is also not expected to return. It's going to be some players out there that are getting cut and released by their franchises that I think Houston can sit back and say, oh, we want you. Oh, you fit this scheme. Oh, I know that you may have this injury history, but Nick Caserio is your what? King of the prove-it deals.
Yes, sir.
Come on in, Tre'Davious White. I got a 1-year deal contract for you. I know you ain't played no football for real since two seasons ago. He hasn't played more than 10 games in 2 seasons. But when White is on the field, White is a baller. All right, come on in. I got a 1-year prove-it deal for you. Don't worry about it. Maximizing.
1-year prove-it deal for Xavier Howard. Oh, that came out?
Come on in. We got a 1-year prove-it deal for you, and I've spoken about Howard, but come on in. We got some 1-year prove-it deals for some of you guys that under D'Amico on the defensive side of the ball, right? And here's the thing about it: you can make upgrades at some of these positions by adding some of these veterans, and then maybe drafting some of the same positions. Now you're looking at depth, and you still have the money to swing on some of these premier defensive players, some of these premier offensive players, not that many premier offensive players that I think Houston necessarily needs now that we know that Mike Evans and T. Higgins will be going back to their respective teams, right? You still look at Saquon, he's available. Josh Jacobs is available. Those are the 2 premier players that I think Houston will need right now. You also can go with DeAndre Swift, bringing back Devin Singletary. That's an idea that we've talked about. But if I'm Houston, I'm looking at these DBs that have been released, and I'm thinking to myself, can we get anything out of old man Jordan Poyer?
That's the same guy I was thinking of.
Out of Tre'Davious White? Is there some holy water that maybe, what's your boy, Jack used to be left in the building that we can rub on his injuries and he can play, right? Can we pull a Mark Jackson out here in Houston? Is there anything left? I'm going to say absolutely no to Jamal Adams. Absolutely no to Jamal Adams, unless he wants to come in and be a hybrid 3-4 DN or a linebacker. That's it. I'm not even considering Jamal Adams. And I think Eddie Jackson would be a good fit for Houston as well. Maybe not playing starter snaps, but a rotational guy that in his career, at his point in his career now, that can come in and be impactful. But I also like the idea of Jerome Baker as well. Thank you guys for listening and watching the Locked On Texans podcast. Please sure to subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. And follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, that's Cody, COTYDAVIS _24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.